I've said it before, and I'll say it again. League battle decks are the best route into the game for anyone looking to play on a competitive level. A healthy heaping of staple cards, a coherent strategy, and a powerful deck boss all make these fantastic products. And the Single Strike Urshifu VMAX League Battle deck is no exception. Cracking this one open, we can see that the Single Strike Urshifu VMAX League Battle deck comes with a 2-2 line of the Single Strike V and VMAX Urshifus, a 4-3 line of Single Strike Houndoom, 2 Oranguru, 2 Single Strike Stonejourner, 2 Boss's Orders, 1 Bruno, 2 Escape Rope, 3 Evolution Incense, 3 Marnie, 1 Ordinary Rod, 4 Professor's Research, 4 Quick Ball, 2 Single Strike Scroll of Scorn, 2 Switch, 1 Tool Scrapper, 4 Tower of Darkness, 4 Urn of Vitality, 4 Fighting Energy, 4 Single Strike Energy, and 4 Stone Energy. Just like the Rapid Strike deck before it, the Single Strike list has a pretty fleshed out framework for a competitive build, with the ratios being slightly less awkward here due to the fact that Single Strike Urshifu V is actually a more useful attacker than the VMAX in many cases. So while the 2-2 line isn't ideal, it does scale better with the other Pokemon included and how the deck plays in general. And to be fair, there are a ton of consistency options included here that make this deck run surprisingly smoothly. All in all, it's a pretty impressive list, and even if the nominal deck boss isn't always your best play, it is still a fearsome contender. Single Strike Urshifu VMAX is a deck boss that perfectly embodies its archetype, for better and for worse. Stat-wise, Urshifu VMAX is a fighting type. It is effectively a stage 1. It has a healthy 330 HP. It's got that nasty psychic weakness. And a retreat cost of 3 means it's not going anywhere without a little help. And obviously there's that Single Strike badge, which helps this lumbering behemoth prepare for battle. In terms of what it can do, Urshifu VMAX has 2 attacks. One is fine, and the other is impressive, but costly. The first attack, Beatdown, costs 3 colorless energies and does 100 damage. Now, on its face, this is pretty poor. The standard tends to be 130 damage minimum for 3 energies, so this can be a letdown. However, you do need to factor in that you'll be attaching Single Strike energies, which buff damage by 20 each, and that the all-colorless cost does allow room for deploying other special energies, like Capture Energy, for example. The second attack, G-Max 1 Blow, costs a whopping 3 fighting energies and 1 colorless energy, doing 270 damage at the cost of discarding all of the aforementioned energies attached. But the trade-off for this heavy investment is that the attack goes through all effects on your opponent's Pokemon. It's costly, to say the least, but paying it with Single Strike energies might just guarantee you a KO on the enemy VMAX. And it can let you punch through invincible Pokemon like Decidueye, so keep that in mind as well. In terms of raw competitive potential, this one's solid, but not stellar. The Single Strike Urshifu VMAX is a threatening presence on board, but its big one punch is extremely resource hungry, making it more reliant on its archetypal engine than its Rapid Strike twin. And even now, it actually tends to play second fiddle in its own archetype to the much more popular Umbreon VMAX. But if we're looking for a solid reason to use Single Strike Urshifu VMAX, then the unparalleled damage output is the big selling point here. With the right support, this Pokemon can potentially end a game in 2 hits, and that is something that needs to be respected. So now that we've got a good idea of what this Urshifu can do, let's have a look at 3 different ways that you can build a deck around it. Unlike Rapid Strike, the Single Strike archetype is extremely straightforward, and this means that pretty much every deck boils down to essentially the same core. There's not a ton of room for creativity or expression outside of tweaking ratios and maybe finding the odd consistency booster here or there. And consistency really has to be the focus in Single Strike. Single Strike lives and dies by how quickly you can set up your Houndooms in order to start accelerating energy to your attackers. You need at least 2 Houndoom established by your second turn, so all the extra ball search and inclusion of capture energy helps to make that job a lot easier. Now, this is an extremely linear build, but then Single Strike is basically here to do one thing, so set up well and start swinging with your Urshifu Vs, using the VMAXs to take the really big knockouts when necessary. And that's literally all you need to do. For a really long time, Single Strike Urshifu was the worst pick of the 2 bears, and it particularly languished because of its inability to do much besides, well, punch hard. That and its psychic weakness was particularly troubling since it really couldn't accommodate an out-of-archetype secondary attacker like the Rapid Strike bear could with Moltres, for example, and don't even get me started on how bad Tyranitar V actually ended up being. But Umbreon VMAX solved pretty much all of Single Strike's issues overnight, skyrocketing the deck into a dominating force in the metagame. Now, you not only got access to the extremely valuable Dark type for attacking, you also got a built-in boss's orders, which meant that you could pick your targets, and run more consistency options to help the deck set up more efficiently. This is the most competitive variant of Single Strike Urshifu VMAX at the moment, but it's also the most expensive. I honestly can't call this upgrade path budget friendly, but if you absolutely want to try it out while not blowing too much cash, then a 2/2 line of Umbreon VMAX is just enough to make the list work. And I really hate to say it, but yes, if you want to run Single Strike competitively while still playing Urshifu, then Umbreon is a must for now. Unless you're a Gengar bro, but we're not gonna go there. And finally, on the expanded front, the Single Strike doesn't really gain much outside of slightly better search and access to nicer draw supporters. You could stick in a Jirachi GX if you really want to patch up that psychic weakness, but otherwise, you're just really streamlining your Urshifu and Umbreon plays. A Single Strike isn't really a good fit for expanded, in all honesty. It's very reliant on multiple pieces setting up at once, which means that you can't really turbo it in the way that you would, say, Pikarom or Zoro Ninja, which are decks that can set up game-ending boards as soon as their first turn. And you just don't really have the room to run things like VS Seekers or Trainer's Mail, which would otherwise buff your consistency to the degree needed to keep up and expanded. But if you're keen to try it anyway, then I've had decent enough success with this particular list. It's just flexible and aggressive enough to take on the tag teams and VMAXs on the ladder, but it maybe doesn't have the juice to take on real monsters like Dragonite V or Colossal VMAX. So play this one for fun, or if you need a 5-minute break from standard. And if you want to see some of these builds in action, stick around until the end of the video or check the description now for links to some sample gameplay. Otherwise, let's wrap things up and see if this League Battle deck is one to pick up or pass on. So, what's the final verdict on the Single Strike Urshifu VMAX League Battle deck? Well, let's start by looking at what this product does right. I might sound like a broken record at this point, but League Battle decks will almost always get big points from me for being cost-efficient routes into meta decks and oodles of staple cards. This one in particular is fantastic because you basically get the entire Single Strike engine in one sealed deck, which means you don't really need to buy a second one if you don't want to. Just buy a 4th Houndoom and you're good to go. And I think this deck better articulates and supports its archetype than the Rapid Strike deck did. You honestly have everything you need to set up pretty quickly and start smashing stuff with your Urshifu and your Stone Journer. And the number of consistency options available here mean that you're gonna get the pretty ideal setup almost every time. That said, I think the deck still would have done better to give us one more Urshifu V. When you think about it, you only have 4 attacking Pokemon in the deck, so I really think they could have maybe dropped the filler Orangaroos, for example, for a Single Strike Hitmonchan or Snorlax instead. Just 1 or 2 more attackers would have been really nice. But that's about it. I obviously can't ding this for not including the Umbreon line because that would be asking a little too much of a $30 product. As much as we all wish the Umbreons were a lot cheaper, this isn't really the right place to groan about it. So, should you pick up the Single Strike Urshifu VMAX League Battle deck? Well, yeah, especially if you're going to build the Urshifu-Umbreon variant. Because the Umbreon build of this deck is the most competitive available at the moment, and because it really only requires maybe 1 or 2 copies of the Single Strike Urshifu VMAX, then this deck presents a pretty cost-efficient route to building the core of that deck. And with the money you save on buying this, you can eventually scrape together enough change to afford the Umbreon line, especially if the VMAX Climax reprints end up dropping the price of the originals. We all have our fingers crossed for that one. And again, you really only need to buy one of these because the extra Houndoom, Urshifu V, and maybe the extra VMAX might only cost you $10 total if you're really going to go all in on a solo Urshifu build. Quite frankly, I think the deck is a firm 4.5 out of 5 because the value is there, the list is as close to competitive out of box as anything I've seen in a while, and while I can't say it's perfect, it's pretty damn close as far as sealed products are concerned. But what do you guys think? Are you going to pick up this League Battle deck, or has the skyrocketing price of the Umbreons put you off of Single Strike for the time being? Are you maybe leaning towards Rapid Strike instead? Let me know in the comments below. And that'll wrap it up for now. If you're looking to take any of the upgraded deck lists for a spin, I've put them in the pinned comment below, or you can find them on the show's Twitter page at SealedOnlyPokey. And if you want to see any of those deck lists in action, you can click the links in the description below to jump straight into the fray. Finally, make sure to subscribe so you can get your regular fix of Pokemon TCG goodness. In particular, I've got a few deck profiles in the pipeline, including one that you might say is absolutely electrifying. I will catch you all next time, guys, and until then, take it easy.